today, do you answer work email on the weekend? How about when you get home in the evening?
A new law in France is attempting to give employees the right not to do that. I'm Malika Bilal.
I'm Femi Okay, and you're in the stream.
Kwe, my name is Michelle Odette, a mother of 5 beautiful children and an activist for Aboriginal women. I am in the stream.
Are we turning into a workforce that never really shuts off? The rise of digital communication has increasingly blurred the lines between work and personal life. A recent study found that 1 in 3 people in some of the world's largest economies feel that work-life balance has become more challenging in the last 5 years.
We've all struggled with answering emails once we're home from work, and the problem isn't going away. France's right to disconnect law gives workers the right not to respond to work-related emails during established times. The law raises questions about whose responsibility it is to create boundaries between work and private life. Is work-life balance possible in the digital age? Well, with us to discuss, we're joined by Nigel Marsh, the author of Fat, 40 and Fired, and a former marketing executive. He joins us from Hobart, Australia. Patrick Thibar is a labor employment lawyer. He joins us from Paris, France.
Emily Hill is a health and wellness journalist. She's in the US state of New Mexico. And in California, Alex Pang is founder of The Restful Company, and that's a consulting firm to help organizations and people become more productive. He's also a visiting scholar at Stanford University. Hello, everybody. It's good to have you here. Nigel, hello. Nigel, when did you realize that the balance between work and your real life, it was not what you'd like it to be? When was that moment?
When my wife asked me to take my twin daughters to the kindergarten, and I had to ask her where it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yikes. So this idea about the French law of you have to disconnect, like you go home and then you're done with work. What was your reaction when you saw that, Nigel?
Sensational.
Right.
You've got to love the French. That is just such a wonderful idea. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it has to be an issue that people take personal responsibility for. Whatever the governments or companies do, it's a bit like the weight issue, is if you aren't on top of it yourself, then it will always creep towards you working too hard.
Patrick, you're sitting there as a Frenchman, part of our conversation. How is this going down in France? Are people loving it? It's now sort of law as from the beginning of this year. Are they loving the idea that you don't have to answer work email in your own time?
Yeah, it's a great law, and I would say that in France, I think that there is a kind of consensus about this law. Actually, in almost all the countries, you have rest time, and you're not supposed to receive emails during your rest time. But we know that in the reality, this is not how things work. So the law just said, now it's time for employers and for unions to negotiate agreements on the terms and conditions of the right to disconnect, and it's definitely up to each company to take the lead on this. The law, it's really a soft law. There is no sanction. The thing is, you must change your habits, because nowadays the way we work is definitely meaningless. We spend roughly 30% of our time in just checking our emails on a daily basis. What is the meaning of our work under these circumstances?
Right.
And it's reasons for what you just raised there that I would venture to say it's why you heard Nigel say that new law is sensational. There are people online that also agree. This is Sarah. She says capitalism has created a work environment that forces people to constantly be stressed about losing their job, forcing overwork. So she therefore says the government needs to be more involved and hold companies to higher standards to create better work environments for their employees. Alex, what's your take on that? The government needs to be involved. It's hardly their responsibility as well.
Right. Well, I think that's absolutely right, and even allowing for the differences between French law and sort of systems in the United States. I think that it is a kind of worker protection that deserves to be taken seriously. The other thing I would point out is that this is actually good for companies as well. That there was a recent estimate that every message sent and received costs an organization $1 in terms when you factor in the time required to process email, and that executives spend something like 4 hours every week just playing traffic cop for their inboxes. And so I think that that any company that doesn't already think about these issues and already have some kind of policy in place for dealing with email in the evenings or over communication in the workplace should be asking themselves, why aren't they?
Let me share with you a thought here from Ability to Thrive. Disciplining yourself to stop checking email and bosses to respect personal time. Disconnecting isn't a problem caused by tech. Emily, it's not tech or email that's the problem, it's us. We have no discipline.
I couldn't agree more. I think that a lot of times it's our personal policing that's the problem. But I think that the wider issue is that we kind of create this identity of ourselves from the work that we do. So that our identity, our purpose in life comes from what we do at the office. How we define ourselves comes from our career rather than the other quadrants of our life. And I think the main problem with work-life balance right now is that we think about work and life as this binary thing. Half our world is work and half our world is life. It's way more dynamic than that. And thinking of work-life balance as binary like that is way too simplistic and is a part of the problem, and something we need to consider more in the conversation.
I think that's completely correct. And if I can just build on that, Emily, I think there's also a problem more than governments or companies, is human beings glorify overwork and busyness. So even if it's doing the school run, not at work, it's a very acceptable thing to say is, oh, I'm so busy, oh, I'm just completely rushed around. When we were talking before the show and you asked me how my work-life balance was, it was difficult for me to say it's perfect. I'm completely non-stressed. I'm having a great time. It would be far easier for me to meet you lovely people and say, oh gosh, I'm having a really horrible time because I'm so rushed with all the very busy, important things I'm doing. I risk you thinking I'm a loser by saying I'm actually completely balanced. My only complaint is I have no complaints.
Nigel, there's actually someone who has a term for what you just described. She calls it self-exploit. This is a video comment we got from Gillian Simon. She's a professor at Royal Holloway at the University of London, and she's explored how digital technology has affected this work-life balance conundrum we have. Here's what she told us.
In our research, too many employees blame themselves for not having work-life balance when it's not all under their control. So it's clear that employers have to be taking more steps to ensure employees don't self-exploit just because they have these technologies. Indeed, is it time that we start thinking more about how technologies can support sustainable working patterns over the long term than specifically focusing on this idea of work-life balance?
Patrick, do you see it as self-exploitation?
Well, I don't know if it's really self-exploitation, because at the end of the day, I don't think really employees have the choice. Everybody can switch off his laptop or his smartphone, but at the end of the day, we do not do it. Why that? Because we feel obliged to respond to the email we receive. So my view is we should train people, and we should train the managers so that at the end of the day, we think twice before sending an email. We're definitely in the culture of the urgency, and we take the view that every single email should receive an immediate answer. And definitely for me, and that is the meaning of the French law. The thing is, we must train people. Many people ask me, but in your legislation, there is no sanction. Of course there is no sanction, because it must be done on a voluntary basis. Everybody should understand that it is in the interest of both employers and employees to definitely decrease this increasing trend of email that we receive.
Let me just show you something here, guests. This is from Colorado State University, a study they did about anticipatory stress of after-hours email exhausting employees. So I'm just thinking, Alex, how do you get away from that? We've kind of identified what the issue is in terms of feeling obligated to work longer hours, and we're tied to our technology. But how do you get away from that? The French put it into soft legislation. What's your suggestion?
Well, I think that we shouldn't either overestimate the role that that workplace norms or that signals from leadership play in guiding the way that we think about our own time and how we should or whether we should respond to the constant stream of messaging and technology. I mean, I think it is absolutely the case that these social norms are important. It's also the case that the fact that we can be accessible 24/7 kind of turns into a feeling of inevitability that we must be on 24/7. And so I think that the first step is to recognize the way that these opportunities or these technical capabilities turn into either requirements or things that feel like they're inescapable, and recognize that, in fact, we do have choices about this, that even if overwork in some ways kind of feels cool, it makes us feel important, it makes us feel like we're essential and that we shouldn't get laid off, should there be another downturn, that really we are that this is the wrong way to think about the way we spend our time and the way that we communicate, and it's not good either for us or for our work.
I hear you there, Alex.
I think we need to redefine the term.
Go ahead.
I think that's a sensational point that Alex has just made. I've had over 30,000 emails since I wrote Fat, 40 and Fired, and the thing that I would say to anyone watching this is I've never seen a situation that can't be improved. That doesn't mean be solved, but be improved. There's always hope. And the key thing is, it's not about time management. It's not about tips and tricks. It's about a fundamental underlying concept. Am I going to live my life constantly on the hamster wheel where I'm the beck and call of other people? Or am I going to turn the telescope around and take control myself? And that needs honesty, where just maybe I'm not going to be the global CEO of, Facebook or something, because I refuse to be 24 hours, 7 in contact. And if that means I'm going to be less successful than someone else, great. I mean, fantastic.
Exactly.
I hear stories where people say...
I think we majorly need to redefine the term, because offices in corporate America offering flexibility disguised as a way to achieve work-life balance is
it's a trick to make you work longer.
Exactly. It's a hoax.
Yeah.
So
completely.
Flexibility does not mean balance, and balance doesn't mean equal either. So just because you spend half your life at work and half your life doing life, whatever that means, that's not balance either. I think we need to redefine what work-life balance really looks like
Emily, you are so right.
Context.
So Nigel, Emily, I want to give some real world examples here. So you mentioned that sometimes these policies are a hoax, Emily. So this is Ola, and she would agree. She says some organizations do have good policies, but some managers make you feel terrible from carrying them out, i.e. working from home. Here's one real world example of that. This is Anmol, who says, you forgot unlimited vacation policy. That actually means no vacation at all. Another person, this is Dan, he says, I despise the unlimited vacation policy. It's a manipulative corporate strategy that gets them off of deficits on the ledger. So even when the policies are there, people don't always feel empowered to be able to take them. Nigel?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, completely right. Again, like with obesity or drinking or anything else, it has to come down to personal responsibility. Whatever the government says, whatever your employer says, if you haven't sorted the issue out yourself, then the world and corporations and capitalism will edge you towards ever greater, longer hours. You have to make a stand yourself.
Use yourself as an example, because what you're saying makes an amazing amount of sense. But what's the example? Give yourself as the example. What happened to you, and how can you sit there right now and tell the world you have perfect balance in your life? How did you get there? Because everybody's watching going, what did you do?
Well, I'm not clever or anything, and I'm not saying I've got the answer, but I spent 30 years being a corporate hamster, doing all the wrong things, thinking if I could work harder and be more effective and more efficient, then I would sort it. Like Emily says, I'd have perfect balance. And then I lost my job, and there's a wonderful phrase, pause for a moment, you wretched weakling, and take stock of your miserable existence. And that's what I did. And I just decided to live my life in a different way. And I tell you something for your audience, I thought it meant I would be less conventionally successful, and I was happy to take that consequence. But what's actually happened is I've been more conventionally successful by being more balanced and working less hard. I'm completely surprised. I thought no one would ever want to employ me, or I'd never be able to earn any money ever again. I thought that's fine. My children and my wife are more important than some stupid office. But by having my beliefs and values at the center, it actually made me not just happier, but more employable, bizarrely. It doesn't mean you can't have a job.
Let me give you some examples myself, too. Femi, you asked for some real world examples. And in my life, as a freelance writer, I'm constantly fighting work-life balance. But I've made two decisions that affect my everyday life to give me more balance. And one was giving up my car. I've been car-free for 6 years, so that the moments when I commute on my bike turn into these moments of self-reflection or thoughtlessness, some inner stillness, and I meditate. And I think those are two things, like Nigel said, that you have to take personal responsibility about. Those are two things that I can make time in my day for. And they don't cost my career anything, but they contribute to a more balanced feeling in myself, unrelated to the responsibilities that I have in my career life.
So here's one more example. Alex, I'm going to throw this one to you. This is an example we got from Stephen, who is the CEO of and the founder of Tower Paddleboards. Here's what his company is doing that's a little bit different.
How we approach work-life balance at Tower Paddleboards is we move the whole company to a 5-hour workday, starting at 8 a.m. and working straight through till 1 p.m. We've got rid of lunch. And we feel it's just by compressing our workday, it sort of puts this time pressure on us and forces us to find ways to work faster. And in the knowledge worker economy, we think this is what is necessary to work at a good speed, because over the last 20 years, the ability of people to be productive has really gone up 10x with technology and the connectivity of people. But the average worker is only like 80% more productive than they were 40 years ago. People are wasting a lot of time. They're not using the tools that they should be using.
So Alex, he says we don't actually really need 8 hours. So 5 is all we need. For employers who might be listening to this, what is your pitch to them? Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think Tower is actually a really good example of a company that's been very thoughtful about how accessible they need to be to their customers, how they can use technology to make themselves more productive. But they are by no means the only one. There are plenty of companies in Silicon Valley that are experimenting with sort of shorter work weeks or doing other things to carve out time so that, and this is really essential, so that people are able to work in highly focused ways for periods of several hours. And it turns out that if you're a programmer, if you are a composer, sort of generally about 4 really hard hours of work is the most that you can expect of yourself in an average day. But I think the other important thing is that there is, while there is an important individual component here, there is also a social and even a gender dimension as well, that women and men in the workplace, when they do things like use flex time policies, are evaluated differently for it. And so it is still important to keep in mind that these kinds of policies exist in contexts that make it easier for some people to get this kind of balance and for others than it is for others.
Guess let me share this with you, because we've been talking a lot about employees, but I'm wondering about employers. This comes from a journalist called Kay Burley, and Kay says, I was reminded today about Joe Biden's approach to work-life balance in this letter to his staff. So it's a letter that's a couple of years old. It's from Vice President Biden. It starts with, "To my wonderful staff," and he's basically telling them, if you have something important in your family life, go do it. Don't work with me that day. Your family is more important. And he says that if I find out that you are working with me while missing important family responsibilities, it will disappoint me greatly.
What a fabulous letter.
Wonderful.
What a fabulous letter. That's just great leadership right there. Good on him.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
No, and the assumption that the higher up you are, or the more important your work, the longer you have to work, is not always the case. Winston Churchill during World War II took 2-hour naps every single day. And he found he made better decisions. He was, he was able to get more done in fewer hours. And I think, he serves as a great model of, here's a guy who was saving Western civilization.
He also lost the next election. So maybe like a 45-minute power nap might have been better. I'm being slightly facetious here. Patrick, what do you want to add?
Something I would like to say is that regarding employees, most of the time, some of them have a difficulty in giving priority to their tasks. And I started this show by telling you that employees roughly spend 30% of their time daily in checking their emails, and that's where we have an issue here. How can you be productive? How can you be creative if you spend most of your day in checking your emails?
Right.
And so the thing is, we must also train people. We must train people in, from time to time, disconnecting. There is a time for being connected, and there is a time for being disconnected. We all experience this very long meetings where everybody is actually checking his email and do not listen at all the persons who are in the meeting. And so at the end of the day, I think this is an important thing. Another thing I would like to say regarding emails is, it's not because you send a lot of email that you are a good communicator. And so we should stop giving a positive image to people who send tons of emails. I think it's very important. I think that we should.
Patrick,
you see what I mean? I think
you make a very good point. I'm just going to squeeze in one more comment from our community, because we need to get the show balance just about right. MILIC, what do you have?
This is a personal story from Vanda. It hurts my heart. She says, in my first job, I used to sleep in the office. At 25 years old, never again. So to counter that, this is Nora, who says people need to trust their staff. Working from home and flexing time are game changers, happier and more productive.
Goodness me. So much more to talk about. We are going to do that on our online post show at stream.aljazeera.com. We're going to take Nigel and Patrick and Emily and Alex. If you're having issues with balancing your work life with your private life, I suggest you go to stream.aljazeera.com and join us in the post show. See you soon. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hello again. We are talking about this, is it a unicorn? That thing about work and life balancing out beautifully. Nigel, you were just about to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's, I think, one of the really, really important things for us to acknowledge is there isn't one answer for everybody. And part of the problem is people comparing themselves to other people, in particular, you know, some of the idiotic images we get in the media of, you know, stars or celebrities or whatever else. If there's somebody who runs their own company, I think that paddleboard company was a sensational example, but that's not very relevant to someone that works in a factory in India, in a menial job, not a managerial job. It's really important that living on the West Coast of America or in Australia, you know, being a consultant or an author, we pontificate about answers to other people who haven't got control on their lives. So there's different answers for different people, and it's about personal responsibility and making work-life balance is the wrong phrase, but we know what we mean by that. But making balance something that you work on in your life, just like you work on maybe your fitness or your finances. It's not something that's going to naturally happen. If you naturally leave it, you will end up being overworked. So just like if you naturally leave it, you will end up fat. You have to put some personal thought into it in whatever your personal circumstances might be. And there isn't one answer. You know, for some people it's working from home, and some it's working in office, some are self-employed, some are unemployed, some are part-time, some are full-time. So, you know, it's really important that us four don't pretend that we have the answers for other people. We have hopefully some insights, but we haven't got the answers.
And Nigel, I want to add this because I think the danger of talking too much about work-life balance is that people think that it's attainable. Like it's this thing with meat and bones that we can achieve someday. But it's, like you said, it's a daily practice. And some days being good and some days being bad is perfectly normal. And it's more of like a fulcrum, like this. When we get it right, it feels like a little sway rather than a static balance. Like Dan Thurman said in his TED Talk, it's like a headstand where when you're standing on your hands, you're constantly readjusting with trying to stay upside down. And that's what balance is. It's a very dynamic thing. And by making it this health buzzword, I think we're in danger of for people to believe that it's something that we can just get to one day. And even us four who practice it all the time, we still struggle with it every day. And I want to make sure
I totally agree.
Everybody out there
I think one of the,
hears that.
I completely agree. And I think one of the biggest problems is people think it's as you say, it's a thing, it's a routine. So I've got, I think, perfect balance, but my days are completely different, my weeks are completely different, and my years are completely different. Yeah. It's not that I get home at 5 o'clock and I have, you know, breakfast at 9 o'clock. That I haven't got a routine or a schedule. I've got a philosophy and a set of values. And exactly as that video that you mentioned, if you look at him doing that handstand, you know, he's adjusting all the time. But if you step back and look at him, he's actually doing a handstand. So he is balanced, even though he's moving all the time. And that's exactly, it's a great example that you use, is people should relax a bit about their own personal answer. I wouldn't suggest my answer for you. I mean, unless it happened to be bizarrely your answer. Yeah.
So Alex and Emily, I want to throw just a tiny little grenade into this conversation, because we got this comment from Rowan who says, this is a very first world discussion. isn't it? And so while you ponder that, we also got a comment out of Ghana. This is Razak, who says, I'm a social worker from Ghana who works 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday and another 1 hour in the evening traffic. I don't know what it feels like to hang out with friends and family. And so some of the results of that kind of feeling is referenced in this tweet from Nafizi, who says mental stress can lead from this. It's deadly. Therefore, modern employers should make room for employees to rest and refresh. So a lot of thoughts there, Alex. Do you want to take on any of them?
Yeah, sure. And first off, there is a century's worth of research now that shows that of constant exposure to work that it actually really literally is deadly. It does shorten your life. I think another point that I would sort of make, building on sort of what Nigel and Emily had said and what they've written, is that thinking about work-life balance at the level of the day is maybe less useful than thinking about it over the course of the year or the decade.
Absolutely.
That,
Absolutely.
there are some, so many people who are challenged with work-life balance are challenged to advance their careers while starting and nurturing young families. Those are often two unbelievably difficult things. And rather than do what we do with education, where you devote yourself to schooling for X years, and then generally you go off and sort of do other things, we've decided that what could possibly go wrong if we take these two great things in our lives and just try and do them at once. And I think that sort of a sense of balance that can play out over years is one that maybe can be healthier. The danger is you put off having having a family or doing other things that you love until it's too late. But I think that the idea that you are not crushing it if you are not both making partner and going to the kids, kids play, is that's an incredibly high bar for anybody.
Okay, guess. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. They kind of jumped out at me. I'm curious about what you think here. So this is Tokyo, and this is a business here on my laptop where when the workers are doing overtime, they put on the back of their purple capes what time they're supposed to be going home because people work way too much in Japan. Patrick, thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, I mean, that is definitely an issue because in Japan, I know that people work very, very, very hard. And the thing is, at this point in time, we speak about that it's very important to have a well-balanced life between work and private life. But at the end of the day, I'm somewhat skeptical about the possibility for maybe in the US, for US government to have a legislation on this. And France is definitely the very first country in having a legislation on this issue. And I'm just wondering whether you believe that in the US or in Australia, you believe that it could be feasible also to have such a legislation?
All right. I'm in the US. Malika, what do you think? Would that legislation fly here?
No. This is actually, I'm glad that you raised that because we actually got this tweet from Krista. She says, I should mention that the United States is very unique in work-life balance approach with roots in the Protestant work ethic. And for those who don't know what that means, it means you work now, you get the fruits of your labor a little bit later. So this is, in the US, she doesn't think necessarily that would fly. Another place that it might fly, this is a video comment we got from an American who's in Germany. And here's her perspective on what people there are like vis-a-vis the work ethic.
My name is Hannah, and I've been living and working in Germany for about 5 years now, so I feel eminently qualified to make big blanket statements about the work-life balance here. There's a stereotype about Germans that they are always on time for everything. Well, guess what? They also leave on time. When it's quitting time, people go home, and if you're working overtime, the implication is that you didn't work efficiently enough during the day. Now, this is starting to change, and like I said before, this is a blanket statement, but I thought that was pretty charming coming from the American perspective.
Let me show you another idea that's come from Germany here. A German company has introduced an auto-delete program for emails for out-of-office workers. So if you're away on holiday or vacation and you get an email, the email just blows up. You never get it. It disappears. I love that idea. That is so radical. I am going to ask you for one single sentence, for one thing that people who are watching can do to make their lives better in terms of where their work is and where their rest time is. Nigel, your one sentence of advice would be what?
It's about conscious choice. If you want to work 23 hours a day and not have a family and not be fit, that's completely fine. Just think about it. So for me, it's decide, don't slide. Don't slide into a life, decide on the life that you would like to try and get.
Patrick, your one line of advice would be what?
Well, my view would be you just cannot do this on a voluntary basis because employees do not necessarily have the choice. So my view is we must educate management so that they take care about these emails and stop sending emails every time. That's
Emily,
really my view.
one piece of practical advice in a sentence would be what?
Take some time for yourself each day and practice some inner stillness and nourish yourself more.
Alex.
Turn off your phone at night. That's.
Sorry, that's me having a panic attack. Carry on, sorry.
No,
that's it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow, I was going to try and do each of the 4 things you suggested, and I'm not sure I'll be able to do it, but practice makes perfect. Thank you, guests, so much. Malika, how's this conversation gone down online?
Well, because you asked the guests, I'll give a piece of advice to our online community, both for employers and employees. Chris, to employees, says, don't let your mobile phone into your living room or your bedroom at night. So looking at you, Alex. And to employers, Steve says, colleagues and employers should have no expectation of response to email outside of work hours. We'll see how feasible that is.
Thank you so much, Nigel and Patrick and Emily and Alex. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. We are learning your lessons, hopefully day by day. Take care, everybody.